Nice big orange extension.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming to our Wednesday night Bible study at Eastwood Church of Christ. We appreciate everyone being here. We have some visitors with us tonight, and both members and visitors alike, we'd ask you to please fill out an attendance card from the pew in front of you and pass those to the center aisle. We'll pick those up at the end of the service. Right now we have our speaker, Josh, is off preaching. I believe he's doing the same thing at McKenzie Church of Christ tonight. Is that right? Okay, yeah. And so his older brother Ryan is with us today. Now Ryan is since 2016 he's been the full-time preacher at the Somerville, Tennessee Church of Christ. He went through Mid-South School of Preaching 2002 to 2004. Were you the first Manning to go through, I think? Yes. He started the trend. He started the Manning trend at Memphis School of Preaching. And he is going to be speaking tonight on the community that gives together. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to him.
All right. Y'all look like a pretty nice crowd. I haven't seen the people who are entrusted to the care of my little brother. Y'all better do a good job, okay? I know you are. I know you're trying. Y'all better do a good job, though, because, he is my little brother, and since he's not here, I can say that I actually care about him. And hopefully you've grown to at least tolerate him like I do. Now, I was told that I could just stand up here and tell stories for 40 minutes about him, and that y'all would like that. And boy, do I have some stories to tell. You see, we have an older adopted brother named Kirby, but he's the second born of our biological brothers. There were 5 of us that are biological brothers, and he's the second. I'm the first. So I got to see him do all kinds of things. Like when he was a baby, I can tell you everything that he ate. But I think there's kids in the audience, so I don't want to. Let's see. Oh, well, they're probably in class, aren't they? I could tell you to ask him to show you a picture of him with his hair parted down the middle of his head. That was a trend for a little while, and he doesn't like that. It lasted for a bit, so he might not show you. But I'm glad to be here. And I'm glad to be talking about this subject. It's kind of a neat subject. The community that gives together. When we think about giving, and when we think about, actually, I haven't preached too many sermons specifically about giving because, well, I usually include it as a point in a sermon, but I haven't devoted too many entire sermons to giving. But this is an interesting take on the idea. And I'm glad to be assigned this take. And it's about community giving, because when we think about giving, we usually think about how that giving is, let's see, is it up there? Giving is an individual action. It's an individual action. And from the very beginning, you see that we as human beings have a responsibility for the things that we bring to God, the things that we offer to God. First thing I thought of, or the first story that I thought of, is in Genesis chapter 4. And we have two brothers who had to bring something before God, Cain and Abel. And when you look at Genesis chapter 4, you see that, well, their giving was individual. And that was actually, well, crucial to the story, because Cain, a farmer, brought of the first fruits of the ground. Or brought of the, let's see, what's it say? It says he brought of the fruit of the ground an offering to the Lord. Abel was a shepherd, so he brought, it says, of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. So each of them brought to God a different offering. And, well, God accepted one and rejected the other. Anybody know why God accepted Abel's and not Cain's? Is this a sermon or a Bible class? It's a Bible class? Because if it's a Bible class, y'all aren't getting off. I don't like to let people sit stone-faced with their mouths closed in Bible class, because I have 40 minutes to speak, and if you make me speak for that long, my throat will get sore, and as a preacher, that's not good. So if we're in Bible class, y'all need to speak up too. Just to do me a favor, right? Just to do me a favor. Y'all seem like a good group. So just do me a favor. And if you have a question or a comment, what do y'all need to do with it? Just speak up. Speak up and let it out. That was a test when I said, what do y'all need to do with it? Y'all were supposed to speak out and let me know. Now, you do what you want, okay? You do what you want. But if you want to say something, please do. Anyway, Cain and Abel. Why was Cain's offering accepted and why was it rejected? Or why was Cain's offering rejected and Abel's accepted? There we go.
I think God didn't accept it because he didn't, it wasn't what he was looking for.
Wasn't what he was looking for. It might have been not the best of his crop. Yeah, these are good. These are good guesses, conjectures. I don't think that's the point of the story, honestly.
I think God didn't respect what he did.
He very much didn't respect what he did. It's a matter of faith. By faith, Abel offered a better offering than Cain, yes. And New Testament also says, where is it? It's in 1 John somewhere. Y'all have to fact check me later, but it talks about how Abel's offering was accepted and Cain's wasn't because Cain was evil. Why did he kill? Well, because why did God accept? Because Cain was evil. So whatever reason, and I'm not sure that it matters. why God rejected. I'm not sure that's the point of the story. I think the point of the story was when God rejects you because because of something, how do you respond? I think that's the point of the story. How do you respond to God rejecting you? Well, here you have individual responsibility for giving. And here I bring a gift to God and God rejects me. Well, how am I going to respond to that? Yeah, obviously he didn't bring, something was wrong with it. But when we are rejected of God, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to say, it's not my will but yours, right? And we're supposed to submit to God. And a lot of people, they don't submit to God. But in this story, we see an individual responsibility. We also see, let's see, in Matthew chapter 6, Jesus talks. And you're going to see me looking back because I don't trust these clickers. The one that I have, I'll push like this, and I have a screen on the back that I look at and I see. And sometimes I'll push the button and it won't work, and sometimes I'll push the button and it will. So if you see me looking back, it's because of my deep-seated lack of trust. But that's okay. I'll grow to trust this clicker because it seems to be working. But we have a responsibility. Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 and following, Jesus says, "Take heed that you do not do your alms before men." So we're not talking about giving in worship, but we're talking about generosity and things like that. And, well, we have a responsibility to do this in a way that we're not bragging to others, right? Don't do your alms so that others can see them. Otherwise, you have no reward for your Father which is in heaven. So when you do your alms, what aren't you supposed to do? You're not supposed to sound a trumpet like the hypocrites do in the synagogues and the streets. It says that they may have glory of men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward. But when you do alms, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, that your alms may be in secret, and your Father which sees in secret shall reward you openly. And in Matthew chapter 6, this is kind of a theme, isn't it? Don't do your religion in front of other people so that other people can see you. It's not a good thing that you are putting on airs with religion. I go out and, oh yes, look at me, look at how great I am. No, it's not a good thing. Our religion needs to be something between, my religion needs to be something between me and between God, right? So when I give, it is an individual responsibility. 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 6 and 7. You can't preach a sermon about giving without this passage, right? We're not going to spend too much time in it, though. You may be onto something there, because that's the Sermon on the Mount too, isn't it? That's the previous chapter. Matthew chapter 5, let your light so shine before men that they may see what? Good works. So I'm not to brag about my religion, but I'm also not to hide the things that I do so nobody sees good works being done. There has to be some sort of a medium struck. And we're going to see that even though giving is something private, it is also something that we as a community do together, and we encourage each other by the fact that we're giving and by the fact that we give to help a cause. 2 Corinthians 9, 6, and 7. But this I say, he which sows sparingly shall reap also sparingly. Don't be greedy or a penny pincher or whatever, but he that sows bountifully shall reap also bountifully. And then here's the individual responsibility part of it. Every man as he purposes where? In his heart. Yeah, as you purpose in your heart. How are you supposed to do it? Well, it says not grudgingly, not of necessity, because God loves a cheerful giver. So we're supposed to give as we decide. Now, giving is an individual action. There's that distrust again. But it is also a community action. And this is what I would like to spend most of the time on. It's a community action. And throughout the Bible, you can look and you can find examples of not just a person who is sacrificing or giving, but you can look and you can find communities that gave, and sometimes they gave overwhelmingly. Like our first example here is in Exodus chapter 35, and the people were called upon to donate what they had for the tabernacle. You got your Bibles? I hope you do. Come to Exodus chapter 35. Verse 5. Moses, he's speaking to the whole congregation of the children of Israel, saying, "This is the thing which the Lord commanded," saying, and then verse 5, "Take ye from among you an offering unto the Lord. Whosoever is of a willing heart, let him bring it. An offering of the Lord, gold and silver and brass." So in this passage, we see that Moses is addressing the community, but he is involving the individual as well, right? Whoever has a willing heart, bring this offering. I wonder what happens when you don't have a willing heart in this situation. And he tells what to offer. He tells what needs to be offered. Then when you jump forward to verse 21, it says, "And they came, everyone whose heart stirred him up, and everyone whom his spirit made willing. And they brought the Lord's offering to the work of the tabernacle of the congregation, and for all his servants, and for the holy garments." And there's a great phrase there, "everyone whose heart stirred him up, and everyone whom his spirit made willing." This is a group of people. And there's a group of people coming together. And each one of them is stirred up to do something. Would you call this the spirit of generosity? They had that, didn't they? A lot of times you hear people talk about how there is a season of generosity, right? What's that season? Yeah, well, I would say the season in December, the Christmas season, but really it's the season that comes after Halloween. So October, and even before Halloween too. I mean, you get to go shopping even then. But Halloween, then Thanksgiving, then it's such a long season. I like Thanksgiving. Why skip over that? But a lot of people associate that time with a spirit of generosity. And of course, we as Christians know that we're supposed to do that when? Yeah, as we have opportunity, we're supposed to do that, right? As we have opportunity, we're supposed to give, especially to those who are of the household of faith, Galatians 6:10 says. So this spirit of generosity, well, here you see the spirit of generosity. And just imagine the people. It says everyone whose heart stirred him up, but you can almost see there a person whose heart stirring up. There's a twinkle in his eye, right? And it talks about the men and the women giving of their things. They came, it says, verse 22, both men and women. And they had that twinkle in their eye. They had that urge to give, that spirit of generosity. Why? Because they knew that they were going to build something, and they knew it was going to be, well, the place where God dwelt, right? Now, we know that God doesn't dwell in temples with hands, but representatively, he said, I'm going to meet you there. The priest, once a year, would go into the most holy place, and there, man would commune with God. God sits, they pictured him sitting on the throne above the Ark of the Covenant. There he is, in his throne room, and here, they're getting ready to build that. We're going to build the throne room. And they're all called to participate in this. And that's an amazing thing. Generally, when you think of the most holy place, the holiest of holies, you don't think of something that involves everybody, do you? What happens if just any Joe Schmo walks into the most holy place? You die, yeah. I heard a legend, a Jewish legend, and I don't think it's a true legend, but it's interesting that the ancient Jews, they told a story that the priests would go in with a rope tied around their ankle in case they went in and did something wrong and died in there. They had the rope on there so that somebody could pull them out with it without having to walk in there, then they themselves would die. That's a very old legend. And I'm not sure that that's a true legend. I'm a little skeptical of that, but it's funny how they thought about that. You got to respect the most holy place. And at one point they thought, if we go in there flippantly, we're just going to die. But here you have the whole congregation, and before it became a place where nobody could come and nobody could touch, this was a place where everybody is involved, participating. We're going to build this. Bring the clothes and the fabric that you have. Bring the gold that you have. Bring all of these things. Your jewelry and your silver, your brass, your linen, and all these things. And it says in verse 29, it says, the children of Israel brought a willing offering unto the Lord. Every man and woman whose heart made them willing to bring for all manner of work which the Lord had commanded to be made by the hand of Moses. This goes beyond just the individual. This is everybody, and they're coming together as a people doing this. That's an interesting lesson. The community that gives together. Now, they gave so much that they had to stop. In the next chapter, let's see, around verses 5, moving to 7, it says, they spoke to Moses, saying, the people bring much more than enough for the service of the work which the Lord commanded to make. So Moses gave commandment, and they caused it to be proclaimed throughout the camp, saying, let neither man nor woman make any more work for the offering of the sanctuary. So the people were restrained from bringing, for the stuff that they had was sufficient for all the work to make it, and too much. When was the last time you've heard that about a congregation giving? Well, we've given too much. Y'all just stop now. We don't need it anymore. Well, this is what a community can do, right? When you think about the needs that we have and the needs that people have on this earth, there are so many opportunities that it would be really difficult for me to imagine a situation where I would say, well, I don't have anything else that I could think of to support. That'd be tough to do, wouldn't it? You know, as wonderful and as giving as a congregation is, give them $1 million and tell them, all right, you've got to support some things. How far can you go with that? Less far than you think, right? Oh, sure, you can manage your money wisely and you can do a lot of great things. But I promise you, if you said you have $1 million, solve all the problems in the world, spread the gospel to every creature. No, well, we've just started. We've just started. So they gave so much, and they gave as a community. Now jump forward to the New Testament. And we have the early Christians. In Acts chapter 4, beginning in verse 32, we have these Christians with a clear goal. And they are so generous. It says, the multitude of them that believed were of one heart and of one soul. Neither said any of them that any of the things which he possessed was his own, but they had all things common. This was when the church began, and this was a time when you had so many Christians who were converted in Jerusalem that lived in various places throughout the world. So they came together, and imagine you come on a trip to Jerusalem, and you become a Christian, and you say, well, I don't want to leave yet. I have more to learn. Where are you going to live? What are you going to eat? What are you going to wear? I mean, you brought clothes, you brought a suitcase for a week. Now you're wanting to stay for months? Man, I'm going to need some more clothes. So what will they do? Well, they don't have Jesus multiplying bread and fish so that everybody can eat all the time. They need food, don't they? They need a place to stay, don't they? So you have this situation in the next chapter. In Acts chapter 2, you see this idea of having all things common as well. Well, there was a great need because the church was together, and there were a lot of people who were not at home. And there was a financial need and a strain. Well, this gave the congregation. There was only one congregation at the time. This gave this congregation a purpose for their generosity. It says they were of one heart and of one soul. And none of them said, well, my things are mine. What did they say? We have these things in common. And this is generosity. Verse 34 says, neither was there any among them that lacked, for as many as were possessors of lands or houses, they sold them. And they brought the prices of the things that were sold and laid them down at the apostles' feet. And distribution was made unto every man according as he had need. So the early church had a lot of generous people. You know who one of those generous people, you know who one of those people was? I hear it. Oh, I thought you said Josie's. Yeah, Barnabas. Joseph, who by the apostles was surnamed Barnabas, which means what? Son of consolation. A Levite and of the country of Cyprus, having land, sold it and brought the money and laid it at the apostles' feet. So here you have all of the Christians, and they had all things common. They were all striving toward one goal. And what were they able to do? They were able to support each other. They were able to distribute to everyone's needs. Now, everyone's needs are going to be different, aren't they? People are going to need different things. Somebody with a big family is going to need a lot more than somebody who just came alone. But the church was able to handle this because of generosity. And one thing I want you to notice from Acts chapters 4 and 5 is this kind of giving, I believe, was contagious. What do you have? People sold property, took the money, laid it at the apostles' feet. Barnabas sold property, took the money, laid it at the apostles' feet. Do you know of anybody else who sold property, took the money, and laid it at the apostles' feet? Ananias and Sapphira. Now, they get a bad rap because they lied. But I want us to take a lesson from this, from Barnabas, and from people like Barnabas. Here they are giving, generous, and it's not something that is secret. So they're not, it's not like they're saying, well, I sold something and don't tell anybody. People know that there are folks giving and donating to the apostles' feet. Barnabas was a wealthy man. He had lands, he had property. And other people look at him and say, I want to do that too. Ananias and Sapphira, they got the wrong kind of motivation, didn't they? There we go. I don't trust myself sometimes. I got to look to make sure I'm on the right point. They were motivated for the wrong reasons, weren't they? It says that Ananias and Sapphira, his wife, sold a possession and kept back part of the price. His wife also being privy to it and brought a certain part and laid it at the apostles' feet. Why did they do that? Well, it's pretty obvious why they did that. It's obvious because of the lie that they told. They said, this is everything we got from this property. And they kept back some of it. What was their sin? Was their sin holding back some of their property? Selling something. I sold a piece of land for $20,000, and here's $10,000 of it. What do you think Peter would have said? Thank you so much. That's amazing. And if they would have done that, imagine, they held back, they laid it they brought it at a certain part, they laid it at the apostles' feet, and they let the apostles know this is just part of what we got. It would have been good. And Peter says that. He says, while it remained, wasn't it your own? And after it was sold, wasn't it in your own power? You had the right, you had the ability to do this. So Ananias and Sapphira, they wanted everybody to know, look at all that we gave. And here's where you make a distinction between giving and encouraging people with your giving and giving alms to people so that others can see you. Take heed that you do not do your alms before men, Jesus says. Why? Because you'll get your reward from men. Barnabas he was just as open as Ananias and Sapphira. People saw him give, but he was giving for the right reason, wasn't he? In his heart, it was for all the right reasons. And because of that, his giving was good, and his giving was encouraging to other people. Imagine if you have a cause that you're going to give that is, we have this cause that we need to support, and we want people to volunteer, we want people to give, and you have a bunch of people coming up and giving for it, and you see that. What happens when you see others doing something? You want to do it too, right? Yeah, that's a big deal. When you see others doing something good, it encourages you to do the good thing. Whether it's giving or evangelism or reading your Bible or, there's lots of things. That's why we're told, we have to lead by example. You ever hear somebody say, as a Christian, you preach a sermon every day that you get out of bed? And the sermon is preached by your life. You don't even have to say a word. Well, that's what's going on here. Barnabas gets up and without saying anything, he says, here's my sermon. You should be generous too. And people did. Unfortunately for Ananias and Sapphira, they got the wrong message from it. And they said, oh, I bet we can get some points. We could get people to think of how great we are. Take heed, Jesus says, that you don't do your alms before men, that they may see you. Now we come to another community contribution effort, and this is the contribution to Jerusalem. By the way, what time are we finished? You told me, but I forgot. 40 after? So I got 5 minutes? I hope you're not. I hope for... What?
Either 5 or 7, somewhere along there.
5 or 7 minutes. Okay. Yes, sir.
Instead of giving money, what about giving your time?
Giving your time?
Like, if you see somebody in the world, like an elderly person with a flat tire, or
Well, I've always heard that it said that time is money. Your time is valuable, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. If you believe your time is valuable and you give somebody your time, you're giving them the equivalent of money. Because when you work at a job and someone says, I'm going to pay you $20 for every hour that you work, that means your time is valuable, isn't it? Based on your labor. So when you do something for somebody, you are giving, aren't you? It's not just the money that you give, it's your time, your labor, although we are told to give of our money. We are told to give of our funds because there are things that need support. For example, the Jerusalem congregation, they went through a rough patch. And the Christians were in need of funds. They were in need of funds to help. So Paul went around and he asked the congregations in Greece to help. He went to the province of Achaia first. And what big city was in Achaia? There's a book named after it. 2 books. 1st and 2nd Corinthians. Yep, Corinth. And then he went to the Macedonians. And there was a congregation with a book named after them in Macedonia too, Thessalonica. There were more than that, but Thessalonica was one of them. A great congregation. If you look at 1 Corinthians chapter 16, we have this other giving passage, and it says, concerning the collection for the saints, specifically he's talking about this collection for the Jerusalem congregation. He says, as I've given order to the churches of Galatia, oh, there's another province. So he went to Galatia, Achaia, and Macedonia. Probably more than that. Even so do you. Upon the first day of the week, let every one of you lay by him in store, as God hath prospered him, that there be no gatherings when I come. And when I come, whoever you will approve by your letters, then will I send to bring your liberality, the gift that you're giving, to Jerusalem. So how did that go? Well, a year later, he writes 2 Corinthians, and he tells them, and this is kind of neat. In chapter 8, he says, look at the example of the Macedonians giving. Moreover, brethren, we do you to wit of the grace of God bestowed on the churches of Macedonia. How in that in a great trial of affliction, the abundance of their joy and their deep poverty abounded unto the riches of their liberality. And as you go on and you read, you find out that they gave more than just their money. They gave themselves first to God. So Paul says to the Corinthians, he says, look at the Macedonians, the congregations in like Thessalonica. Look at how, even though they're poor, look at how generous they were because they gave themselves to the Lord. So Macedonia, even though when they give, they're, take heed that you don't do these things to be seen of men. Paul is saying, look, there's an example. First bell. He says, look at the example. And then in the next chapter, he says, as touching the ministering to the saints, it's superfluous for me to write to you, for I know the forwardness of your mind, for which I boast of you to them of Macedonia, that Achaia, you guys in Corinth, was ready a year ago, and your zeal hath provoked many. So he says, he says, you Achaeans, you Corinthians, look at these people over here in Macedonia. Look at how they've given themselves to God, and look at how great their generosity is. And then he goes to the Macedonians and says, look at these Achaeans. I told them, these people in Corinth, I told them that we needed a gift, and they were zealous. They were ready to give. And both sides. See, we have not just these communities encouraging themselves to give, but we have both of the communities encouraging each other. So, I want to get one more scripture before we leave. Let's see, how far back am I? There we go. Philippians chapter 4, verse 17. I want to finish with this because here is a congregation who gave to Paul, supported him. And in verse 17, there's a phrase that I would like to leave you with. Paul talks about, no church. In verse 15, no church or no congregation communicated with me as concerning giving and receiving, but you only. So they supported Paul as he went around his missionary journeys. They gave him money. In Thessalonica, you sent once again to my necessity. But in verse 17, he says, not because I desire a gift, but that I desire fruit that may abound to your account. Herein is my Father glorified, that you what? Bear much fruit. Now, how do we bear fruit? One might go out and spread the gospel like Paul the missionary. But those Philippians were also bearing fruit too, weren't they? Be quiet. They were also bearing fruit, weren't they? Because they were supporting Paul. They came together and supported a cause. Now, I'll leave you with this question. When we give, it shouldn't just be to keep the lights on in the church building, should it? That's bills, right? Nobody likes paying bills. What are the causes that we can support? As a congregation, as members of the congregation, get involved with the things that we support, the spreading of the gospel, because when you, for example, support a missionary, you're bearing fruit with him. That's an important thing. When you support something, when you give of your time and your money and your effort, and you come together as a congregation to do something like evangelize the community, what are you doing? You're bearing fruit. And that's why we give. We don't take our money so that we can keep these on. God doesn't care about the lights. God doesn't care about the building. And, we don't take our money so that we can build a nice, huge building. What do we use our money for? Bearing fruit. Everything that we as a congregation does should be toward that goal. All right, I've taken up too much time. Look at me, I'm still rambling. Think I should quit? I think I will. Thank you so much for your attention. Some of y'all gave me some comments, and I appreciate that. So I'm done. I'm just up here rambling now. Y'all are dismissed.